Hello again, and welcome back to Educator.com's Advanced PHP with MySQL course. Today's lesson is a rather exciting lesson because we're going to be providing an introduction to databases, which is going to lead us down the path towards integrating a MySQL database with our PHP application, which is one of the main goals of this course. As part of our lesson today, we're going to be discussing a concept known as flat files, which is a way of maintaining data for a particular web application. We're going to introduce the concept of relational databases, which is what MySQL is. As far as databases go, relational databases go, we're going to talk about what a table is and some of the properties of columns in relational database tables. We're going to introduce something you may have heard about before called SQL. It's a structured query language. We're going to talk about what that is and how it's used in our database, how it's used to work with databases. And then we're finally going to finish up with a rather important topic called primary keys that describes basically some data that types of data that are going to be included in our tables, and then provide some primary key examples to emphasize the point. So in general, a database is just a organized collection of data that you can access. You can add information to it, and then you can search it, or it's in database parlance, you can query it to find out information. In our web store, we've actually had a database that we've kind of referred to as a database, but not so much specifically been calling a database. And basically what we've been doing is we've been storing all of our data in text files, which are often referred to as flat files. So it's considered a flat file database. And basically these text files that we have, items.txt and department.txt, contain all of the data about the items and departments in our store, and is essentially our database. If we look at items.txt, for example, basically what it does is it describes the, as we know, it describes the item ID of a particular item. It has its name, its cost, its description, image extension, and so forth. And so we've basically been storing all of this information in a database that's just composed of files. Well, there are a couple of problems associated with using flat files as a database that relational databases is going to help to solve. First of all, it's typically slow to access and add and search information from text files. As mentioned, they're difficult to search. And to do things such as updating a file is difficult as well. For example, in our current application, when we update a department, basically what we're doing is we're copying all the file out. We're searching for the row that we need to update. We update that row, and then we rewrite all those rows back to the file, which is not a very efficient way to do things, and can take time and is difficult. Additionally, concurrent access to flat files can be a problem. If you have maybe two web users that are logged in at the same time that are trying to add an item to the store, for example, they both have to have access to that items.txt file. And so we haven't talked too much about it because our relational database is going to take care of that, but you have to worry about things such as file locking issues so that multiple people can access the file at the same time without overwriting each other's data. So a relational database is going to help to solve some of these problems. So basically a relational database is a different kind of database, and basically it stores data and relations between the different pieces of data in the database in structures called tables. So basically it stores things in tabular format. What's known as a relational database system, or RDBMS, is a system that provides an interface for managing and basically using a relational database. So a relational database is comprised of all of the tables that contain the information in the database. The RDBMS provides additional features on top of that. It provides an interface for accessing those tables, adding and deleting information in the database. It also provides ways of maybe providing security on them. It provides things to allow concurrent access to the data. And so MySQL is a relational database management system, and so it sort of provides these additional features. So not only are we using a relational database, but we're using this sort of management system on the outside that provides this nice interface that allows us to do different things. So RDBMSs solve many of the problems of flat files One of the first being that they're faster than flat files for both storing and retrieving data. We talked about searching for data in a flat file, or we talked a little bit just a minute ago about it, but actually, when we need to look up an item in a store, we need to go through line by line, each line in the file looking for a particular item. Databases or relational databases are made for doing that in a fast and efficient manner, so it's going to increase the speed from which we can look things up. Additionally, part of the service that relational database management systems provide is they handle concurrent access automatically. So they allow multiple users to connect to the database to read and write, and they ensure that one person's changes don't override another changes. In our flat file database system, if we really wanted to ensure a system that allows multiple people to access at the same time, we'd have to write our own code to do that. And it's rather difficult to do, and we basically would have to manage it on our own. So by using a relational database, it eliminates us from having to even worry about concurrent access, as the database handles that automatically. The other thing that RDBMS provides is typically is a privilege system for controlling access to the data. So for right now, our flat files can be accessed by anybody that has files or operating system permissions on those files. Well, what you can do with the RDBMS is have fine-grained control over your data, so you can restrict. You basically add users to the database system that restrict who can access what parts of the data. For example, who can access certain tables of data, who can perform certain operations, who can add things to the database, who can only query from the database, and so forth. And the nice thing about that is, again, this is something that's built into the system, to the database management system, so it's not something that we have to implement. If we wanted to implement that on our own, outside of the operating system privileges that provide basic access control for files, we'd have to implement that in PHP and go ahead and validate a particular user and say, okay, this user can access that file, this user can update this file. Well, the relational database management system does that for you automatically. One thing to note is that you'll hear me say RDBMS, or relational database, and I sort of use those terms interchangeably, which is a common thing to do. So just so you know, anytime I refer to a RDBMS, or relational database, I'm basically referring to the same thing. I'll refer to a MySQL database, and in that case I'm actually referring to the whole database management system, which provides these things like the privilege system, facilities for concurrent access, and so forth. Also, for the remainder of this course, when I talk about just use the term database, I'm basically referring to a relational database because that's what MySQL provides, and that's what we're going to be using for the rest of the course.